and first cover the rules meeting portion, and then part of that I'm going to skip over intentionally and then address at the end, which is the ball handling directive that's come out this year, which is new from NFHS. Okay, so everybody needs to make sure you have yourself updated as it relates to concussion. And this is the same thing I say every year when I do the rules meeting. It's the same in every other sport. Correct me if I'm wrong. For those of you who do basketball, football, etc. A referee has the latitude to remove a player from a contest. And it is state law. It is not an OSSAA requirement. Other than that, it is state law. That athlete, or I'm sorry, we're in Oklahoma, athlete, does not go back into the contest, the next contest in which they play, without written authorization. Now, for those of you who do other sports, I don't know how this goes down, and I know we're not here to talk about other sports. However, maybe you've had some better experience, or here's a better way to put it. It's happened more often in your sport than it has in volleyball, simply because of the nature of it not being contact. The best analogy I can give to you, and this is a question that was answered at the coaches meeting that I just did 3 or 4 days ago. Rich, what happens if there's a certified healthcare professional on the premises who will provide written authorization that night that they can go back in? We're fine. Okay? However, you're probably thinking along the same lines that I am. If Linda does a match on Monday night and she removes a player who she feels shows signs of being concussed, and Rich comes along behind her Thursday night and officiates the same team, am I necessarily going to know that that player was removed? No. So I'll tell you the same thing I told the referees in Oklahoma City, and the same thing I told the coaches. As referees, we're doing this on the honor system because we may or may not know. So I'm just going there for you. If you're thinking through this process, you're right. You show up at a match, you kind of heard that the girl was taken out. Even if you go ask the coach, that coach may or may not be honest with you. So David Jordan is there a week later. David has no clue that that girl was pulled out. And he does the match. Is David doing something wrong? No. So, I mean, we can't be held responsible for information we don't possess. Fair enough? Okay, I want to stop here and see if there are any questions about this particular, what I'll call line item in this year's rules presentation.
Okay, how do we know when the person has a concussion? So what things have to be presented so that we'll know that, hey, this person is not eligible to go in?
Okay, so this is admittedly this is a gray area, but and I'm going to use some medical terminology for you. When you are experiencing some type of physical distress, you possess symptoms. You have symptoms. We don't look for that in other people. What we look for are signs. So medically speaking, you look for signs of a concussion, not symptoms. Symptoms are what we experience. Signs are what we view in another person, first of all. So that's the terminology. And then past that, here are some common signs of a concussed person. Dizziness, lack of visual orientation, dilated pupils, throwing up, headache, nausea, dizziness, right? So I know when Steve was the rule interpreter and I was at a meeting, I'm sorry?
Sensitivity to light.
Sensitivity to light, yes. Mike Clark, who is what Todd Goolsby is now to us for volleyball, said, you know, if you're reffing a volleyball contest, you see a girl kind of staggering around, you need to get to that coach and say, Coach, we really need to take a look at her right now. However, having said that, you do have the latitude to bypass the coach and remove her from the contest, and she's done. So here's something else that I'm just making a statement that we can all agree with. We are not doctors. I know I'm not. I'm also not a PA. I'm not a nurse practitioner, right? I'm not an EMT. So I'm not a paramedic. I am only going to remove a player if I see signs that are consistent with a concussion and they persist. Just because she goes down on the floor and she's kind of, maybe she's got her hands down on the court and she's just taking a second and then she stands up, and that doesn't mean she's concussed.
Right.
So we need to be very careful about this. I mean, it's not like it is for those of you who do basketball or football or even softball. I'm sure you've had collisions at the plate. I'm sure you've seen a concussed player. But it just doesn't happen very often in our sport. So I want you to feel backed up, but I also want you to understand kind of how you need to do this logically. Great question. We've been given the latitude to look at signs of a concussion. And if we put enough of those together and they're pervasive, that's what we need to do. Remember, guys, it's written clearance, and the written clearance must be signed by a certified medical professional. Who is that? Could be an athletic trainer. It could be a physical therapist. It could be a doctor. It could be a nurse. There are many people who OSSA has communicated with me that can be a medical professional. We are not to define who their medical professional is. I want to be clear on that. That is not within our purview. Fair enough? All right, now, we're getting kind of serious, but the chances that this is going to happen to you are pretty low. I still want you to be armed with the right information. And as always, guys, use me as a resource. You're halfway through the season, you think something happened, call me. I'll talk through it with you. Fair enough? Okay. And again, they give the nfhslearn.com website to which you can or will have to go to watch that concussion video. Those of you doing multiple sports are used to doing this. Or if you've done volleyball every year for years and you're used to doing it. Extreme heat. Coaches are actually required to view this. Referees are not. And unless you're reffing in a gym that is hot, we don't really deal with extreme heat. So here's where I want to go with this part of the presentation. I'm going to black the screen out. As it relates to us, what I want you to be aware of is that you stay hydrated on the stand especially, okay? I would rather you dismiss yourself from the stand to use the facilities as needed than not drink enough water. So let's make sure the referees stay hydrated. Also, you may wear black shorts as long as you and your partner match. We're okay with that. And if it's hot enough, I encourage you to do it. I don't want you to be too uncomfortable. That's kind of how I'm going to tackle this part, because coaches are really the ones who need to be monitoring what the athletes are doing as it relates to staying hydrated. But if you have a gym that's overly hot, do the best you can to manage the event. Maybe you have to start 30 minutes later. That's not ideal, but maybe you have to wait till they get some fans in there to get some air circulated. So the only thing that I would point out on this education-based activities slide is that NFHS is famous for saying you are reffing on an education-based platform. So just keep in mind that they're student athletes. They have to meet academic criteria in order to play. We all know that. We don't monitor any of it. And I think that's as far into this particular slide that I want to delve. Points of emphasis, rule changes, and major editorial changes. This is a big ticket item. I hope that everybody was doing this correctly before if you're an experienced referee. However, they have officially put it in writing that this 45-degree angle support, whether it's fabric or metal, that is supporting a drop-down net system is going to be dead by rule. It is out of play. And then I'm going to put this in the form of a question. What decision does the R1 have to make immediately? Say again? Well, okay. That is a potential outcome, but what's the decision?
Playable.
Whether the ball was
Playable or not playable.
Right. Whether the ball could have been played if it had not struck this overhead obstruction. So the decision is, if that wasn't there, would it have stayed and played? Therefore, did it interfere with the legal attempt to play the ball? If it did, what signal should you immediately give? Replay. Otherwise, it's going to be out. We're good. Now, this has always kind of been the rule. However, I have seen inconsistency on how this is being applied. We have no drop-down net systems in Oklahoma of which I'm aware. I asked the coaches if they had any. I got no positive responses. So where do we actually see this all the time in our gyms? Attached to what? Basketball goals. It's the same rule. So let's forget that this is a net system and just pretend that's a basketball goal. Everything that I just stated is in play, no pun intended. In this case, it's not in play. All right? When we're at the Catoosa team camp, they have this set up right here. This is a perfect illustration if you've ever officiated at Catoosa High School. If it hits the strap or if it hits the metal, the whistle needs to go off immediately, right? So here's what I told the referees down in Oklahoma City. When you delay the whistle on this particular rule application, what's going to happen is you're going to create confusion for both teams and the fans. Because half of them know you can't play off of this. The other half that don't know are then going to be confused because your whistle is late and they won't know why you were actually blowing the whistle. So one of the main points of emphasis from me to you is let's get this whistled dead immediately. You know, it's a little bit easier to sell your delayed out call or this if you get the whistle blown in the correct time, because everything works off your whistle, right? So what's the rule? Dead by rule, potential for a replay. Otherwise, the signal would be what, Darlene? Out. Okay, another big ticket item. I am not going to rush through this. There are plenty of good examples in the presentation, so let's not leave here without asking the right question if you need to. This year, NFHS has changed the uniform requirements where you can have two multicolored uniforms on the same court. It's what we do in club volleyball and college. So they've made a really positive change. The one hiccup in this process is they've given you a predominant color rule inside of it. So let's drill into this a little bit. First of all, it's Rule 421. The libero still must clearly contrast with the other players on the court. So all of the rules that relate to clearly contrasting are still there. For example, hunter green and black doesn't clearly contrast, right? Really light pink or yellow and white does not clearly contrast. Navy blue and black, navy blue and hunter green. I'm just giving you some examples that I've seen over my career of officiating. Let me give you another thought process. If you're watching warm-ups and you get to the end of the warm-ups and you've seen every player on the court and looked right at them, and you didn't know there was a libero,
Something's not right.
you might want to figure out whether you think that's contrasting or not. By the way, I had this happen to me in a match. Now, I'd like to think I'm not the most oblivious person in the world. I've been oblivious before, I'm sure we all have, but I finished the warm-up and this happened. So I walked over to the coach. I said, Coach, listen, I just now realized you had a libero. I think this is a little bit of a contrast issue. Do you have another Libero jersey that we can put her in? The answer was yes. Okay, hey, let's go ahead and do that. Problem solved. Okay, so what I'm going to encourage you to do every match, and for those of you who are rookie officials, or maybe this is your second year and you're just not in the habit of doing it, you need to look at every girl that's on that floor and is warming up. Every match that you work, including middle school. Because if we don't teach them when they're younger, by the time they get to high school, if it hasn't been enforced, they will not have learned. And by the way, neither will the coaches. Now, some of you are going to rough coaches who do club volleyball. They are a lot better versed in this than high school coaches, and they only ref volleyball 8 to 12 weeks out of the year. Okay, are there any questions about what it means to clearly contrast? Okay. If a uniform was compliant, which means it was also legal last season, it will continue to be both compliant and legal. So if they're last season's jerseys and we were good, we're still good, because they're actually going above and beyond what the new application of the rule is, or the new rule. I thought I saw a hand go up.
I understand this. Let's say it's not a legal uniform. We still let them play as reported to the state, correct?
Okay, can you slow down the first part of the question?
Legal uniform. It's not a legal uniform. It's illegal.
It's illegal.
Not contrasting. We still let them play and then it's reported to the state?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm of the opinion that sometimes we need to give teams grace. In the first 2 weeks of the season, I'm a lot more gracious than I am the rest of the season. You get what I'm hinting at? Because maybe it's the first or second match. Maybe they have, they're a smaller school. Maybe they have budget issues and it didn't get taken care of. We're now to week 3 and beyond. My vote, they're playing without a libero. Did I answer your question? Now, you won't find that 2 weeks that I mentioned anywhere in the rule book, guys. I'm trying to find a time that I can be gracious in, because the point of me showing up to officiate is not to beat them over the head with an administrative rule. However, if the uniform doesn't clearly contrast, then we're kind of not meeting the spirit of the rule, not just the letter of the law, right? And if you can't tell who it is, how are you going to know that she's even in the match? Remember, you should not have to struggle from any angle to tell that that's a libero. Does anybody have any other thoughts or comments on this, or questions? At least this part of it. Okay. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's another sport. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but is there another sport where you deal with this type of contrasting issue?
Soccer.
Soccer and lacrosse.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't think about soccer and the goalie. Yeah, that would make sense. So for those of you who have done soccer, that's the best comparison I think I could come up with. But our sport tends to be a little unique this way. So we've already talked about the clearly contrast. Now I want to get into predominant colors, because this is where the confusion is going to lie this season, especially because they've just changed the rule. I hate reading to you, but for the sake of clarity, I'm going to read to you. Uniform top must clearly contrast, which we covered, from the predominant colors, think 50% or more, of the team uniform top, excluding the trim. So the collar and the band, anything that's considered trim. The libero's uniform top cannot be made up solely of the same predominant color or colors of the team's uniform top. That means the other 5 girls that she's on the court with. Even if the light colors are placed differently, meaning they're rearranged. numbers shall meet all specs in Rule 424. We'll get to the number in a little bit. So let's not worry about the number right now. So how do we establish this? Predominant colors is the colors appearing on the majority of the uniform top. So think 50%, okay? Think 50% or more. They can have a predominant color with accent colors. And we're getting ready to look at some examples here in a moment. When you can establish one predominant color, any of the accent colors, if clearly contrasting, can be used as the predominant color of the libero uniform top. What is the predominant color of this? It's black. What's the predominant color of the other one? It's orange? Okay, sorry. I will admit to being colorblind in a few areas, but I think that's orange. So, starting this year, would this be legal?
Yes.
Absolutely. We're good. We don't care. They call this sublimation. You know how they get the color like into the material? It's called sublimation. If I can just give you an aside, one of the reasons why you're seeing this rule change, which I think is a really good thing for volleyball, is because it's already been going on in USA volleyball and college volleyball for a number of years. So all NFHS is doing is kind of following in line with what the rest of the volleyball community is doing. So it's a positive change. And we're seeing a lot of these sublimated colors when we go to club tournaments, and college teams are doing them as well. So it's compliant, hence it is legal. Multiple predominant colors. Can you have more than one predominant color? Okay. If they share approximately the same amount of space, yeah, you can. So if we're getting ready to look at an example of this, but if a uniform top has two predominant colors, then that libero uniform can't have what?
Either one of them.
Right. Okay. What are the two predominant colors?
Light blue.
Light blue, dark blue. These are actually Bartlesville's colors. Is this Glenpool's colors, Tony?
Yes.
Okay, I thought there was another school in the Tulsa area had this. I think this has been referred to as Carolina blue, and then, more like a navy blue. So we're going to say this is 50-50 for the purposes of illustration. Can you see okay? All right. If this were the 5 players on the court and this were the libero, are we okay?
Yes.
Okay. What if this were the libero?
No.
Why? Okay, so what is the specific rule that disallows that?
Contrast.
Predominant color.
And same
Oh.
color.
Okay, we've talked about contrasting. Now we're talking about predominant color. So, you've got 50-50 and 50-50. This libero uniform can't have as one of its predominant colors either one of these. That's what the new rule says. I affectionately call it the 50% rule. It's just a way for me to think about it. But guys, this is the rule. So, do I expect you to enforce it? Absolutely. One of the reasons why I'm taking the time I'm taking within this particular clinic, why I can't insist, but I'm really encouraging you to read your rule book, is because when you get on a match and you ref, you don't allow something to happen, and then a week later, Terry Bryan shows up and he disallows it properly, and they give him flack for doing his job. Well, that's not fair to Terry. It's also not fair to the girls because they need to know what the rules are. Guys, we don't write the rule book. We're the arbiters of the match. So let's do our quote unquote due diligence. Okay? If you're working with a partner and you're not by yourself on that particular match and you have a concern about the color, grab your partner and say, hey, look at this. What do you think? Preventative officiating. Let's go back to that. I kind of glossed over it. Coach, do you have another contrasting libero jersey that you could put your libero in? Is it my responsibility to ask that question? No. But why am I encouraging you to do it?
Make it easier to talk, communicate.
Guys, remember, we're facilitators. We're not cops. We're not police officers. We're not there to catch people, right? If that is your motivation for officiating, I want to quickly disabuse you of that notion. That is not what we are about. Okay, this is not as big of a deal. Did anybody get out the ruler and measure the size of the American flag that was on a uniform previously?
No.
No, nobody. Spav, you did that last year, didn't you? I'm kidding. So this is all kind of combined, but on the sleeves, I'm sorry, on the top or bottom, they can have all the things that are listed here: logo, mascot, nickname, and they can sublimate the team mascot, and that is compliant. Okay, so we're good there. What they've done is taken that out, and school references are permitted on the sleeves of the uniform top. Sleeves only is what they're referring to, without size restrictions. So, Linda, you were using Catoosa. Are they the Indians? Sorry. So if they had a big logo that went all the way down their sleeve, we don't care. That's the best example I could give to you. They could have Catoosa down the side and Indians down the other arm. We don't care. All right. And I would also add that if this is something you were ever worrying about before, that perhaps you were robbing energy of other more important things that maybe you shouldn't.
I'm wondering when we're going to get to that point.
You know, listen, there are a lot of administrative things in volleyball, and I tell you, I feel for some of you who get started in this like you've never played or it's your first year, and it's like drinking from a fire hydrant, right? I just don't want you to have that experience because I want you to stick with this. I want you to have a positive experience, and I don't want you to feel like for years they must have gone around measuring the hue and how much was sublimated. We've never done that. So I just want you to know what the rule is. But this is a good change. And again, this is a carryover from club where we're seeing all kinds of crazy, weird, funky designs, and that's fine. But they want high schools to have that same kind of latitude, which I think is a good thing. So even if Lady J's went from here all the way down, we don't care. Oh, and by the way, I can promise you this: it will not interfere with that young lady's ability to pass the ball. She can pass with or without the name on. I mean, it's just a nothing burger for us, to put it in slang terms.
What did you say?
A nothing burger.
That's not slang.
Has anybody seen a 00? Because I haven't. Anybody have a 00? You have?
This summer.
Okay, fair enough.
First time I've ever seen it.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, there are no legal numbers that are 00. It's 1 through 99. Those are, or 0 through 99, excuse me. Those are your options. Again, this is not a big ticket item, of which I'm aware. Beginning in 2023, they're going to have solid numbers that, and they still have to contrast. The contrast part of that has always been a rule, but you will no longer be able to have the outline or the non-solid number on a uniform starting 4 years from now. Does everybody understand why they're giving 4 years? Because of budget. And for those of you who also teach and coach, or whatever capacity, I'm sure you could talk to us for a long time about why NFHS is so gracious on that. They don't just say this year. It's not like college. We get a college ruling, and starting right now, man.
This weekend.
I'm sorry?
This weekend.
This weekend. Right. Okay, so not a big ticket item. Roster and lineup. Okay, again, for the sake of clarity, I'm going to read. Actually, let me back up. Because we're combining my rules meeting with the clinic, let me step away from the rules meeting portion and give you just some clinic stuff as far as just about good officiating. To my knowledge, any of you that are on the board can correct me. To my knowledge, we have always emphasized that the lineup should be given to the R2. I know personally I've trained that. But they are now making it official to whom the roster and lineup get turned in. So, I want to be clear that hopefully when you R2'd in previous seasons, you were always getting the lineup and roster if they use a roster, and I will cover the rule about the roster here in a moment. So, back to the strict rules meeting portion of this presentation. The R2 shall collect team rosters at the pre-match conference. Okay, I need to stop here. Every state has the ability to make variances. And I'm assuming those of you who do other sports, you have variances. I'm assuming. We do in volleyball, all right? Here is a variance that we have always used. And it was even before Steve was the rules interpreter years ago. When I first started reffing in '92, not once since that time have we ever required a team to turn in rosters, except at the state tournament. Okay? So, well, Rich, it's on the PowerPoint slide, so it must be a rule. It is a rule for which we have a variance. Okay? We are not requiring teams to turn in rosters. I covered this with Todd. I've covered this with the coaches. The coaches advisory committee agrees. The coaches en masse agree. And I have yet to meet a referee who this was a big deal for. So here's the deal. I don't want you requiring a roster from the team. I want to be clear. Now, let me tell you the rationale so that you understand this is not arbitrary. In our state, we've just had a history of not doing it, and it's never been something where because we didn't do it, it affected the integrity of the game. Okay, last year, the Edmond Santa Fe coach, Will Etheridge, contacted me after his match the previous night, said, "Hey, Rich, last night, one of my best starting middle blockers went down in warm-ups, and the referee allowed me to put somebody else on the roster." Well, first of all, props to that referee for being a good facilitator. That was great. I'm really glad when I hear about stuff like that. But past that, that is exactly the flexibility that we're looking for by not having teams turn in a roster. And think about this. Are you the one that determines eligibility before a volleyball match starts? No. That's not within our purview. We assume, what?
Nothing.
Okay. Did you violate this?
Well, my first year, I might have enforced this rule.
Okay, fair enough.
Like a boss.
Yeah, just ask him.
There's always one. You know what I'm saying? There's always one.
Hey, can I get a nothing burger with extra?
You realize this is being videoed and it's going to be uploaded?
I'm so
So that was Tony Slagle who just said that her first year in, she
No.
Hey, hang on. Let me finish this thought process, or I'll forget, and then I will address your comment or question. So, I just want to be clear that you understand why we don't do it during the regular season. When will we enforce this? In postseason. For Oklahoma, and this is for those of you who are rookie officials, in the state of Oklahoma, I don't know how other sports does it, but this is how volleyball does it. Everybody goes to postseason, meaning they go to a regional. That's postseason. At regionals this year, we are enforcing this, and I am trying to preach the word as much as I can. If you are doing a regional match, I don't care if it's the 32nd place team versus the first place team, and they only have 7 people, you will check their roster. the roster will be turned in to the R2 at the pre-match conference during the regional tournament and the state tournament only. Now, having said that, here's another companion piece. Sometimes a coach will give you a piece of paper. It has their full roster and their lineup on it. We don't care. That's fine. I don't want you to bring up the word roster to the coach. However, if the coach walks up to you and says, Terry, hey, do I actually have to turn in a roster? You can say, no. You don't need to give a big, long, detailed explanation as to why. If they ask you, you can regurgitate what I've just told you. Okay, one last point, then I want to get to Mike's question or comment. I don't want you to think we're doing this arbitrarily because we just don't care about rules. We are trying to emphasize things that make the match better and emphasizing the roster rule in our state because it's not part of our specific culture. And Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you are a former volleyball coach. Did you ever routinely turn in a roster? Did you do it intermittently?
Every match we turned one in.
Okay.
It was on
Now,
the table. Had to be on the table.
Was it part of the lineup? Was it that?
I had a separate one.
Okay. So, we're good. Fair enough. A roster is a piece of paper that lists the number and the first and last name of every player playing that match. In other words, it's everybody who technically is going to be on the bench for the match. This is why we're going to enforce it for postseason, because we're actually going to have a limited number of chairs and things are just more formal. Okay? The lineup. The lineup is the piece of paper that has the 6 positions of the starting players, position 1 through 6, as they, and the liberos, sorry, thank you, Megan, as they exist on the floor. And that's the piece, that's the document that the R2 uses to line up the players before the serve happens. And that's the difference. Sometimes they're on the same piece of paper. You'll have the roster on the left side, and you'll have 5 different lineup boxes on the right side, typically is the ones that I've seen. Okay, so the rule is they're turned into the R2 at the pre-match conference. Coaches can make changes to the roster until 10 minutes remain on the pre-game clock. This is the warm-up period. Traditionally, for those of you who are rookie officials, we do what we call a 5-5-2 warm-up. However, I want to be clear, that is not a requirement by NFHS. A school, the host institution, could tell you, Roger, we're going to do 6 and 6 and serve within your own time. We, as referees, don't care and will not say anything about a change to the traditional 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. So that's number 1. Number 2, until 10 minutes remain on the pregame clock. So whatever they're doing is just the 10-minute mark. They can change the roster, which again, we're not going to enforce. All rosters and lineups must be submitted to the R2, not the scorer. This is a referee issue. How do we do good preventative officiating, Art? You've been roughing a long time. What's the best way to make this happen? Getting the lineup turned into the R2. Ask for it. Walk over to the coach. Hey, coach, could I grab your lineup from you? You got that knocked out yet? Or smile when you do it. Be nice. Don't be demanding, right? Be a facilitator. Not a drill sergeant, not a police officer, right? Ask. So the match hasn't started. You need to get your lineup. You can ask. What if you walk over to the coach? Hey, coach, do you have your lineup? Nope. David, what are my options?
Well, can we have it pretty soon? Would you be so kind as to get me one as quickly as possible?
Okay, in all seriousness, did you hear what David did though? He asked another question. And that's important because that's part of the man management and the preventative officiating idea that we're wanting to teach. I like the fact that you're asking another question. Just remember, when you ask a question, you need to be prepared for the answer that you get. But I like the fact that you asked the question because it's not a demand. Hey, coach, could we get that? Or when, I really need to get this turned in. Okay, here's something that I talked to the coaches about. And this is another way to be a good facilitator. And then, Vince, I want to take your question or comment. When is the lineup officially turned in? When the R2 walks over to the scorer, gives it to the scorer, and they start, we're done. So think through this with me for just a second. What can you do as a good preventative technique when you get the lineup
Check
as the R2? What?
check the lineup.
Okay, you check the lineup. What are we checking the lineup for?
No repeat numbers, make sure the Libra is on there, captain, etc.
Duplications. Okay. So it's not turned in yet. They have time. They have a little flexibility. I'm going to tell you exactly what I told the coaches. I don't want you to skip this process. The reason why I don't is, again, this is part of being a good facilitator. You know how much goodwill you can create during a match with a coach? Hey, coach, did you know that your libero and your center back are the same number? Oh, thanks for helping me with that. You're creating goodwill. You're trying to create some camaraderie, right? So let's think about how we can facilitate this lineup. Ask for it. Number one way to do it. You don't have to be mean. You can smile. Oh, okay, coach. Well, do you think you could help us with it here in a few minutes? And by the way, when should you start asking for the lineup if they're not handing it to you in a timely manner? Okay, now this is something we borrow from college. You're not required to do it, but you know what? If you'll walk over to that coach and introduce yourself, especially if you have never met them, Linda can vouch for this. She's coached volleyball. It's very professional to walk over. Hi, my name is so-and-so. Hey, coach, do you happen to have your lineup ready yet? Some coaches do. If great, you can grab it. If they say no, what have you already done? You've just primed the pump. That's the time to start asking. And be nice, be professional. Remember, good facilitation, good preventative officiating with the coaches. I want your lineup in at the same time, at the same 10-minute time. And I did not tell them it was a rule. I just said, this is what I want to do. So here's what I need as a withdrawal. I need for you guys to start doing it as a group on time. Otherwise, everything I said to the coaches is not going to work. I'm not doing this to fake anybody out. I'm doing this because here's another part of the culture of volleyball and a rule we never enforce is the penalty for turning a lineup in late. What's the penalty? So even more to the point, let's not put the team in a position of them deciding that the other team's going to start with a point because they turn it in late. And by the way, traditionally, we don't enforce this. Now we're pushing back the start of the freshman match. And now the JV match is going to start late potentially, and the varsity match is going to start late. If you add just 6 minutes as a late start for each match, that's 18 minutes that you're getting out late that night. Because it adds up, right? So here's what I told the coaches. Coaches, this is what we're shooting for. We need your lineup in. Now, give them grace on a tournament because they might have just played. They got to turn around and ref, right? I told them that. We're going to give you grace. But this is what we're shooting for. Pre-match, right? Pre-match. Not in between sets, obviously, because we don't have 10 minutes in between sets. So what can you do at the end of the captain's meeting to facilitate this pre-match?
Coaches, I need going up.
Coach,
Can I get
do
your
you have your lineup? Yeah, Rich, we got it. Or, no, I don't have it yet. Okay, I just thought I would ask because I know some people fill it out way ahead of time. If they tell you no, you haven't lost anything. So that's the first place at the end of that meeting, not the beginning, not in the middle. Wait till you're done. And here's why I'm saying this. There's an added item, and I'm preaching this till I'm blue in the face. Head coaches must attend the meeting. Yes. Head coaches must stay through the conclusion of the meeting. Did everybody just hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sam, when that coach asks you, hey, I need to go, coach, I need you here. You can take care of that when we're done. I mean, you have to say that. I'm cutting to the chase for the meeting. Be nice, but coaches must stay through the termination of the captain's coaches meeting. And if you're making them stay like they should, this is a great time to ask for the lineup. When is the lineup in between sets due? If anybody has your rule book, look it up. 1. So how many minutes are in between sets? 3. Well, okay.
With intermission.
Without the intermission, because normally it's 3. Technically, the both of you are correct. So we've got 3 minutes. So how many minutes do they have to work on this and get it turned in? 2 minutes. So Linda's question is, how flexible can we be? And my point to you is, if you see that the coach is by him or herself and they have 10 people and they're the entire staff, I try to look at the circumstances to how flexible I'm going to be. I'm much less flexible when there's 4 coaches on the bench and they have plenty of help. Coach, I need your lineup. I mean, sometimes I just do that. Okay? Some coaches will assign a certain assistant to do this, but that's the rule. So let's encourage the coaches to get it in on time. And by the way, if you suspect that they're going to be running late and you've reffed them a lot, then what might you want to do as the night wears on? Hey, coach, can we go ahead and get that? I start pushing them. Because otherwise it's going to add up in between sets. And now instead of a 3-minute interval, we have a 6-minute interval. And it adds up. And now we're all going home later. The next item on the rules meeting list, and then I have a comment just from a refereeing perspective. Your only option now as a referee is to have your line judge go on the extension of the end line when there is a server close to his or her corner. Okay? And one other item. This picture, while accurate, is incomplete because, as you well know, the server could start outside of the hash mark as long as, in our case, she finishes the contact with the ball either on or inside the hash mark. The reason why I bring this up is it doesn't matter if the server goes out. It doesn't matter if the server were pulled all the way back. What you want to look at is, even deep, how close is the server to the corner? So I use a 4 to 5 foot window, right? So I tell my line judges, in your judgment, if you think the server is within 4 to 5 feet of that corner, I want you to immediately take 2 steps back this direction and you're good. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the PVO mechanic says 1 to 2 steps, I think.
6 feet.
But it does specify feet?
I think so.
Okay.
But it probably says it in steps.
However, just tell them 1 to 2 steps. The main thing is you're moving them back so they're not a distraction to the server. Here's something that is not on this PowerPoint, but it should be, that I'm going to address as a man management tool. If the purpose is to get them out this direction, and now I'm looking at the inline, do you want them moving up on the corner as the server is moving? No. So, when should the line judge go back to their corner? So here's what I tell my line judges, and you can borrow this if you want. I tell them, ladies, make sure, because it's usually the other players, make sure that that server has completed her serving mechanic. What does that mean? That means the act of serving. You can say it that way as well. Make sure she's completed the act of serving before you move. That's what you need to be telling your line judges. So the slide is good. It's what the other 2 rule codes do, but it's just incomplete information that I wanted to add to. Any questions on this technique? Okay, there is a downside to this, and they address it right here, kind of. that server rips that ball down the line. Now, it was our discretion about where the line judge stood. We could put them on the extension of the in line. So now they see that ball, correct? What are they giving up? They're giving up the potential footfall. If they go out this way to watch the footfall, if this is my court, what are they giving up now? They're giving up that sideline shot. So I tell them, listen, ladies, and the other two rule codes, and this is what you need to start telling them. As soon as their serve is complete, get to the corner quickly and get your head around so that you can watch the court. Okay, this is exactly what I told the coaches. If your player, coach, is so obtuse that she's going to toss the ball into the basket, she gets what she deserves, it's an illegal serve, and the signal is this. What should an illegal serve normally be? Right? Not this. This is illegal contact. This is an illegal serve. But for whatever reason, NFHS specifically wants us to use the out signal if they toss it up into any part of this backboard. Net, goal, backboard, support, whatever. When do you blow the whistle?
As soon as it happens.
That's right, Darlene. As soon as it touches it. Okay?
There's no grace, right?
No grace. Just in case you really want to get into the weeds, you measure the front zone from the back of the attack line to the midpoint of the center line. I know all of you are waiting with bated breath for that piece of information tonight. Your training is now complete, my young Padawan. No, I mean, that's how you meant. By the way, this is why you can step on the center. That's why both of them can step on the center line, because we only measure to the midpoint of the center line. Half of that is theirs. So if a player removes their jersey on the bench or in the bench area, this is new this year, a yellow card goes to the head coach, not the player who just disrobed, as it were. So, good preventative officiating says what? Hey, coach, if you have people that are changing, let's make sure they get to a private area, a bathroom, locker room, some such. Okay.
So blood, stuff like that, they're going to.
Thank you, Floyd.
No.
That is a very good idea. So they've got blood on their jersey and they need to change. The jersey tears. They should not be changing this on the sideline. Now, God forbid a trainer had to cut it off of them. That's not what we're talking about. But I've never seen that happen. So yeah, that's actually that and this occurrence. He or she is the head coach is switching liberos. And then they go over and one girl goes to a regular jersey, one goes into the libero jersey. We're not doing that in the bench area. Yellow card to the head coach. What has to happen now for the remainder of the match? The head coach must be seated. Second referee. After you've done the deciding set coin toss, you need to visually show your R1, if you're working with a partner, what the result of the deciding set coin toss was. You are not yelling across the court. So it should look like this. The captains have gone away. If they're staying on their respective sides, here, serve. Or, I don't have to say anything. Art looks at me and goes, thanks, Rich. He knows exactly what I just told him. Rookie officials, practice this in the mirror. You've done the coin toss. You've gotten the result. You look at your partner. Most of the time they'll stay and then tell them which side is serving, just like that. By the way, what signal is this also during a rally? Back row attack. Okay. If they're switching sides, it's just all you need to do is this. Okay? And you're telling your R1, they're going to switch sides. What you need to remember is, if this team is serving, they told you they're serving over here, but they're actually serving over here. So just keep that in mind if they're switching sides. The serve, this goes to the mechanic that I was talking about earlier. She tosses it into the backboard or the net or whatever. So we've already discussed this item. This is just a signal chart I'm not going over. The only editorial change that I'm going to draw your attention to has to do with, in the case of a team having an injured ill player, each injured or ill player would get this single special injury timeout. Theoretically, they could. So it's Rule 11.4.2. Make sure you read it. I'm not going to read the rule to you. They're just saying each player, not per team. That's all it's getting at. It's not a big ticket item. Points of emphasis. What I think is funny is it says new informal legal back row attack signals. Well, folks, I want to tell you something. There's nothing new about these informal signals. Okay? In the college ranks and in USA Volleyball, we've been using them for years. So I want those of you who are rookie officials to pay special attention to something that you've not learned yet. And for some of you more experienced folks, what you need to remember is not what the signal is, because most of you've seen it. It's when do I use it? Okay, that's gonna be the key. So a potential back row attack comes up. Steve, can you help me with this demonstration, please? Sorry, I didn't apprise Steve of this. Steve is going to, with the ball, Steve is going to approximate where the ball is in the net. So what I'd like for you to do is stand right here, center front, hold the ball all the way up between your hands. Okay, so we're going to pretend that the net, the top of the net is right here. So yes or no, the ball is above or below the height of the net? Okay, so we all agree that the ball is above the height of the net. Furthermore, go ahead and leave it up, please. Furthermore, I'm the back row attacker. I have stepped on the attack line. I hit the ball and I complete the attack. Legal or illegal?
Attack the ball above the height of the net
And
stepped on that line, which makes it
Completed the attack.
and I'm a back row player.
back row player. Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
So we agree that all three criteria were met.
Yes.
Okay, what's the signal? This. However, Steve, again, please hold it down a little lower. I'm that back row player. I step on the line. I punch the ball out. It goes over the net. Legal or illegal?
Legal.
Why illegal, Floyd?
Because the ball wasn't completely above the height of the net at the time of contact.
Even though the other two criteria were met. So, when we know, thank you, Steve, I'm sorry. When we know that the play is legal, that's what this is addressing. Is a back row situation. You're going to have one or two signals that you're going to give informally. You're not going to stop play. You're not going to blow the whistle. You're going to do this, telling the coach, I realized the ball was entirely above the plane of the net, but she was behind the line when she made her approach. Remember, jumping is not part of the rule. The rule doesn't mention anything about jumping. So if you're an R2, don't go over and say, well, you know she jumped, coach, or she didn't jump. That's irrelevant. Or I'm going to do this, which means, yes, she was on the attack line or in front of it, but the ball was not entirely above the plane of the net. So let's review. Behind the attack line when she completed the attack, or the ball was not entirely above the plane when she completed the attack. Both are legal. These are the signals. Okay, that's something that you rookies would probably not have learned. For you more experienced referees, and I want somebody to answer this, please. When do I pull this out and use this?
When there's some doubt, when there might be, I mean, if it's close, if it's 10 feet behind the attack line, you don't worry about it.
Okay, so Floyd, now for the bonus round. Every time?
No,
Well, you said when it was close.
when it was,
Every time it's close, you want me to do this? By recognizing what's going on. Thank you. What you're doing is man management. So I want to be clear about this for you more experienced referees. I don't want you doing this every time it's close. Here's what one of my national raters told me years ago. Rich, I want you to do it the first time it happens in a match to demonstrate that you understand the rule. And then I only want you to do it after that if you're actually getting a complaint from the bench. Because think about it. Okay? Now, Floyd, you're my R2. All right? You see the girl go up. You know it's a back row situation. That coach is already getting out of their chair. She hasn't even touched the ball. She kills it. I immediately come up with this, and the coach is still yelling. Now, somebody other than Floyd, What can Floyd do right now?
Go tell the coach what,
No, play's still going on.
As they are too.
oh.
You're the R2, play's still going on, and I'm doing this, and then I drop my hand. What can Floyd do right now?
Right away.
Well, not much. Because play's still going on.
Sit down and
Do you want Floyd while play is going on? Hey coach, he's missing everything on the court? No. What I want Floyd to do is be aware. Rich put up his hand, did so immediately, and then dropped it, and I saw it. Now, the next question is, what can he do when the rally's over with, potentially if he needs to?
Go tell the coach.
Talk to the coach. Because Floyd has all the information he needs to back me up. Even if the coach didn't see it, my partner did. And if the coach saw it, it's even better, right? So you're exactly right, Jared. That's why we do this. This is why I don't want you doing this every time it's a close play. Behind the 10-foot line, ball not entirely above the plane of the net. And there's nothing new about it. The backboard is pulled up. It is not an overhead obstruction. It's part of the ceiling. That's all this slide is saying. When the backboard's pulled up to the side, you're used to seeing them go straight up. Some gyms have them go to the side. That's all it's saying. What if it's right here, 45-degree angle? Here's what I told the referees in Oklahoma City, and I told the coaches the same thing. I'm depending on you to be the professional and the adult on the scene. If you think this is over 23 feet, it's ceiling, play on. If you think it's below, it's dead by rule, and you treat it just like it were in a vertical position. That's the most common sense answer I can give you. Ball handling. I've saved this for last intentionally, and it's also last here. This is a huge ticket item. Ball, please. There has been a change nationally in what we're doing, and for those of you who are more experienced referees, this is going to make a lot more sense. If you're a rookie referee the first year, listen, but you're not there yet, so we're good. Just kind of put it in idle and kind of listen to the conversation. What is the verbiage of the rule as it relates to this call in the rule book? I'm going to demonstrate this, and I want you to tell me what you think you should call.
Nothing.
Okay, we're good.
Catch on me, yeah.
No, on me. What do we have? We have a double. Okay, so it's non-simultaneous. However, here's the way that volleyball is progressing. When the ball comes out like this, what's the call?
A lot of times we're calling it a double,
Why, Floyd?
because we're looking at the spin and not the hands.
Agreed. So when the ball comes out and it's spinning, we have traditionally called it double because it was spinning. Well, it's got to be a double, Mr. Referee, because the ball was spinning. David Jordan is shaking his head no. So I want you to think about this. If you're up on the stand as the R1, kind of picture yourself there, and you're looking down at the setter, Steve, if you'll hold this and set the ball above your head in setter's position. When Steve contacts the ball as a setter, I want to take a picture right here. And as Steve lets it go, what I don't want to do is watch what?
The ball.
Why?
Because it will be moving in all different directions.
It should be simultaneous.
It should
Okay.
be a legal hit.
So here's the thing. When Steve sets the ball, right?
Oh, jeez.
I want to take that picture there because I'm not judging. Art just read the rule. It said nothing about spin. I'm not judging how many rotations are on the ball. What am I really judging? The point of contact. Okay, so here are some guidelines for you to use. When the ball leaves my hands, even if you see a slight bobble, if it went to Steve, let's pretend I just bobbled it, and it goes right to Steve, what do we have?
No advantage.
Okay, now the rule book, to be fair to Mike is correct. There is no advantage. It doesn't use the word advantage, but you can think in terms of advantage for the purposes of understanding what was trying to be accomplished by the offense. The offense didn't gain anything when they sent the ball, even if it was slightly bobbled, in the direction it was going to go anyway, had it come out clean. Right? Our current ref chair for USA Volleyball, I know this isn't USA Volleyball, I get that, but I'm just giving you a comparison. Her thought process is we need to be less stringent when the ball stays on the offensive side of the net than when it goes over, because now the opponent has to play it. I am all in agreement with that. Now, we've locally been training you guys on this for years, but we're expanding it this year. And I want you to think about, where did the ball go when it left the setter's hands, right? And for that matter, even here, because it doesn't matter. We're not saying set specifically, even though this is where the vast majority of these get called. And Floyd's right, we're calling on spin. We've always been calling on spin. And for the third time, it's not in the rule book. So I want you to be more lenient when the ball goes to the, when it goes to the hitter from the setter and does not go over the net. However, having said that, if Steve is my target and the ball goes that way, what do we have? And we've got this,
So would you say?
right? Hang on just a second. I'll take your comment. One other thing. Even if I'm pushing it across and it's rotating, do we automatically have a double just because it went across the net? No. I want you to take a picture of where it left her hands and then what did the ball do? Not how much rotation there is on the ball. If the net is that way and I push it across and I'm attempting rather to push it across here and it ends up over where Art is, you better be calling it double. But I still want you to look at their hands. One last thought, and then Floyd, I want to take your comment, and Chris, I'll come to you. When the ball goes out of the hands, and when you're at R2 this season, I want you to do this experiment. Watch to see where your partner, or at what point they actually make the double call. And I think what you'll find is they wait till the ball reaches its apex, and then you hear the whistle go off, and then you see this. Why? Because they're watching the flight of the ball and trying to determine, was it bad enough? That's exactly what they're doing. Guys, that's not how you should be calling this. I want to be ultra clear on this. Take a picture. Don't let the rotation of the ball fool you, because it's not part of the rule. Now, I'm going to tell you what, and Steve was actually there, I believe, so you heard what Patty said directly. Patty Rolfe is the National Director of Officials for USA Volleyball. She did an advanced clinic in Denver, Colorado this year. Patty was one of our 2 Olympic officials in 2016. She just took over this job recently. Very, very well-respected official. She has the gravitas to teach at this level, nationally speaking. Her comment to them in the clinic was, if you're not throwing up in your whistle, don't blow the whistle. Now, I'm not going to go that far necessarily, but what's the point I'm trying to get you to understand? Stop calling on spin. Period. And think about some of the things I gave you to help you not call on spin. Yeah, I saw there was a bobble when it came out, but it went right to the hitter. It was going to go there anyway. There's no advantage. Why are you blowing the whistle and doing this? You're doing it because you're calling on spin. And I can promise you this, if you will relax a little bit, you'll find you're more consistent on this call. And between this and this, which is an over-controlled ball and is always an advantage, you're much more likely to be inconsistent on this because you're calling on spin. Now, let me tell you something from a national perspective, guys, and Steve can back me up on this. We are all over the map on calling this, even as national level referees. Go watch a college ref work and see what their criteria is. It'd be surprising what you can pick up, all right? And I'm not being critical of anyone in here. I don't mean it that way. My goal is for you to be more consistent and for us to impact the game less. Because every time you blow your whistle, something has to happen. And if you're going to interrupt the set for this, it better be a double, right? Otherwise, you're deciding the outcome of the match, not the players on the court. I want to be clear about two things. Number one, Joan Powell gave a presentation to it was the National Rules Interpreters meeting last summer in Indianapolis, 18. And she made a really good point in her ball handling presentation. She was talking about painting the ball like that. You could also call it pushing the ball. We do not call painting the ball this. It is not illegal to paint the ball. I'm going to do this to you, Steve. It's not illegal to paint. It is not illegal to push the ball. That's not illegal. It's prolonged contact, catch, or throw. So that has to do with this, Marche, pursuant to your point. This is an over-controlled ball. So for you rookies who are learning how to call right now, and for you more veteran referees who've been calling for a while, please don't get in the habit of calling a painted ball or a push ball illegal contact and then go to try to sell that to the coach. Because it's just not going to wash.
Can
Tony?
you talk about an open-handed hit from underneath?
Yes,
the-
yeah.
Thank you.
So this was Joan's point to all of us nationally. Now, I've known Joan for a while. She was actually one of my clinicians years ago. And so I got to watch her and watch the other people listening, because some of the folks there, they were high school folks, didn't have a lot of exposure. But she looked at them and said, guys, why aren't we still calling this? Well, I would say we're better in the Tulsa area than what she was looking at from a national perspective, because there are some places that are, kind of challenged getting referees plugged in and learning the nuances of the game. But I just want to help you. Pushing and painting a volleyball are not illegal, because essentially what you're doing is you're calling on body position, okay? Sorry. So, outside influences, player technique, spin, coach's expectations, or crowd reaction should not be considered when judging its legality. I don't care that the coach is yelling at you. That is not a criteria for you to put air in the whistle and start calling this or this. Only the point of contact should be considered. But we want more savvy in our sport from officials, not less. We want more consistency, and so do the coaches. And here was my point to them. This is going to make us more consistent. And every coach in that room wants that. It's better to be consistent and call less of this than to call this real tight and be all over the map. Because it doesn't make the sport better. This is new this year. Less severe judgment is applied to a contact by a player. Remember, this is a directive. It's not technically a rule, it's a directive. When they make a challenging or spectacular play while maintaining a legal play. So, here's what I got out of this. I had a player at Boys Nationals. He runs, make sure I got this right. He runs to his right. He goes up here. Floyd, get ready. I looked at that and I went, sweet. I didn't blow the whistle. After the match, the opposing coach came up and said, Rich, thank you so much for not blowing the whistle. That was a great play. And they lost the match. This is the opposing coach. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, what a spectacular athletic play. And was it better or not that I blew the whistle? It was better. It made the match better. It's like giving a card. I mean, is this going to make the match better if you give this sanction right now? Think about that. So when you're judging your criteria, I want you to think that, remember that body position, first of all, doesn't matter. And I'm getting ready to answer Tony's question specifically, but this is part of their directive about challenging and spectacular play, right? I am not saying it's jungle ball time. I'm not saying that. I think I've been very clear about where you need to draw your line. But for some of you who've been calling for a while, I want to challenge you. You need to rethink what your strategy is in getting in the middle of a match with this. Okay? Because I want you to be more consistent. I'm not getting on to you. I want to help you. Now, Tony had a question about this. And this is a body position example. Is it illegal to hit the ball with an open hand, open palm specifically?
No.
Why?
No,
Aren't I catching and throwing it, Art?
maybe.
Right. The answer is maybe. Art's exactly right. It's not illegal to do that. How is that any more of a catch or throw or prolonged contact than this? It's not. Thank you, Mike. So again, you don't want to call on body position here any more than you want to call here or here. You know, balls that get played close to the net, that setter goes up and she realizes it's going to get into the net, so she drops down to try to make a play, and then, you know, you see it maybe bounce around. So if it's a second team contact and you can clearly see it hit here and then hit here, yeah, we've got a double because it's clear. But here's what I see a lot, and we affectionately call these robocalls, like you get during election time. The whistle just automatically goes off, and this is what I see more than anything. What? If anything, it was this, first of all, and it might not have been this. You're calling off a body position. You're calling because it looked weird. Just remember this phrase: ugly is not illegal. Ugly is not illegal. So when she goes up to play the ball close to the net like this, and you're not sure, why are you blowing the whistle? And this was exactly one of the points that Joan was making to this national meeting. Why are we blowing the whistle on this? We're blowing it because it looks weird, and we think something illegal must have happened. Hey, I want to give you a tip. Steve and I do this when we're up together, and so does Mike. I've started working on this with Megan. When they're my R2, I tell them, the closer that play gets to the net, I'm looking at you. And if it's funky or weird, if you're not discreetly, because you can see it better, if you're not giving me this or this, I'm not blowing the whistle. I'm not getting in the middle of that because I can't see it very well. And just because it's looking weird, why am I blowing the whistle? And guess who, if they give this to me, guess who now is going to go sell that to the coach when I do blow the whistle? They are, based on what they saw. So that's just a tip. When you're working with another partner, use them. If they're not helping you, because look, they're closer to the play than you are as far as height, they've got a better set of eyes on that than you do. Use your partner for that. This will make you more consistent. Just remember this, you're going to get in a lot more trouble over your career for the whistles that you put air into than the ones you don't. Because when you blow the whistle, something has to happen. And if you can't explain the rule, then why are you blowing the whistle? If you don't know what happened, why are you putting breath into it? It doesn't make the match better. I've got 2 slides and we're done. I appreciate you guys allowing us to do 2 things in one night and killing 2 birds or 3 birds with 1 stone. I have a list on here I cover with the coaches. These 2 screens are for you guys as referees. Before, and Mike's going to back me up on this as the person who mainly does most of the assigning. When you get that update from Arbiter that you have a match, forward that to your partner and the school contact immediately. How many days?
Comes 3 days and they get the same contact.
Okay, so here's what I told the coaches. Coaches, when you get this, reply to my referees. I said that affectionately, of course, you're not mine, but I wanted them to think that. I want them to know that I'm trying to have your back. So whenever you get it, forward it to your partner, forward it to the school. And I've asked the school to update their information on Arbor, which is gonna help, hopefully, if they'll do it. There's some coaches don't even have their number in there. You can't even get a hold of them. And it's frustrating. Okay. Outside of the Arbiter Sports update, if you can remember, and you're the R1 is supposed to do this, up to a week ahead, send out a notice to your crew. Okay? Communicate with your partner the day of the event, please. That will help. I think I'm getting an amen from Mike. Arrive on time, and if you can't, communicate why you can't arrive on time. And those should be emergencies, not just because you're dragging that day. Okay? You had a wreck, your boss came in and put something on your desk. Communicate if you have a delay. Okay, this is a big ticket item. This is coming from Rich, not OSSAA. In fact, Todd kind of looked at me askance when he saw this, and I respect that. But let me tell you what I'm getting behind the scenes. And fair disclosure, my daughter, who's about to turn 21, played high school and club volleyball, and she told me the same thing. I've had numerous players and even coaches tell me over the years, so I'm not picking on any one person in this room. This is a global, generalized statement to everybody, okay? When you show up to the scores table, to the event, don't try to be a comedian. Don't try to make the girls laugh. Don't try to get in their personal space. Just be nice and leave it at that. I know for some of you, you're very social and you like to really mix it up. Stop doing that. Okay? I have lost track of the number of conversations I've had behind the scenes. I bet Steve can back me up when he was a rules interpreter, and coaches tell me things and players tell me things because I've known them for years and because of what I do, and they won't tell you this. But some of the girls, it just flat creeps them out. I don't know how else to say it. Guys, that's negative for both parties. It's negative for you and it's negative for them because now the whole night they have a negative perception. Be aware of, if I ever have to check a score sheet when I'm the R2, I will tell the young lady, I'll say, hey, I'm really sorry for getting in your personal space, but I kind of need to look at this. And they always say, oh, it's okay, Rich, I understand what you're doing. I want them to know that I respect that, all right? Especially for you male referees. Ladies, it's a little easier for you for obvious reasons, but for all of us, we need to be very careful about how we interact with student athletes. And that's why I put this up. Remember, it's not necessarily their need to be social. They may be very antisocial. And you know what? It's their right to be antisocial. Doesn't matter. That's not what we're there for. We're not there to get them to laugh or to tell jokes or be a comedian. So, fair warning. More thoughts for referees. Please be approachable. Remember we were talking about earlier about being a facilitator? When you're on the stand, be aware of the look on your face. A lot of us, and I've noticed this over the years, a lot of people who officiate, they process and they get this real strong look on their face. And it's because they're processing information. They're not mad. They're not upset. They're processing. But you know what? Those players and coaches don't know that. You look mad, they assume that you are mad and you're mad at them. So be aware of the look on your face.
That's my secret, Rich. I'm always angry.
Okay, if you didn't get that movie reference, that was from the Avengers, and that was Bruce Banner who was getting ready to become the Hulk saying that. See what I mean? Don't be a comedian.
I'm 6'7", you get away with it.
Be easy to work with. And something else. If you have a problem with your assignments, if you have a problem with whatever's going on in your life, please don't air this with your partner. This is none of their business. Period. For you rookies, don't get into this habit. Okay? If you have a problem with your assignment, if you have a problem with the coach, go through the proper channels, whatever they may be, to address that particular issue. This is huge. When you have made a mistake as a referee, please own up to it and say, hey, my bad. I shared when I was down in Oklahoma City a week and a half ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was at Bartlesville. Tom Williams was the head coach at that time. I kicked some call. I called my partner over and I said, look, that was a terrible call. That clearly, I think I called, inadvertently called double on first contact for whatever reason. I called him over and said, we're going to tell her to do this, call the captain's over, my fault. Tom's like, no, don't worry about it, Rich, it's no big deal. Because I didn't bow up on him. I clearly messed that up. Just admit when you've made a mistake. And by the way, when you're the partner of this person admitting, back them up. Hey, coach, you know what? They kicked it. We're just going to replay it. Our bad, sorry. And let it go. Don't be that referee. Well, I didn't do anything wrong. Or that's essentially what you're saying. And everybody in the gym knows you just kicked it. Everybody. So please be willing to admit when you make a mistake. And if you're the partner, back them up. And the last thing I want to encourage you is to enjoy this process, because if you're not enjoying officiating, if it's always drudgery for you, then one of us isn't doing something right. You wanna make extra money? Fine. You wanna learn? Fine. But try to find the process to be enjoyable. Because if not, I want you to rethink your strategy because we don't want this to be drudgery for you. That's not what this is all about. Right? Because coaches pick up on it too, the players pick up on it, and they just see you as this grumpy guy or grumpy lady, whatever. And that's not what we're trying to, get across. This is what I'm not going to go over this, but this is what I told the coaches. And Tony, were you the one that was bringing up about the girls ready to go?
Yeah.
So this is what I talked to it's right here. You are not there to do a clinic for line judges. I covered that with them. I covered with them having a plan. I also covered with them, you know what? You need a place to change. And it needs to be where the basketball referees change.
Yay, thank you.
Yes.
It is. Why should you be changing anywhere different than where basketball gets? I don't get it. Especially when you're playing on the exact same floor in the exact same venue, right? But this is what I covered with them. So pursuant to your point, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, I can stick around for a few minutes to answer. Yes?